My name is Dave Rice. I'm with the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, Office of Air Quality. And one of my responsibilities is to inspect dry cleaning stores that use PERC to ensure compliance with the dry cleaner NESHAP. NESHAP stands for National Emission Standards for Hazardous Air Pollutants. And it's a federal requirement. And the state has adopted the federal requirement as a state rule. Therefore, we have legal authority to enforce. What I do when I first go into a store, of course, I identify myself, and I never go into a store that's not open for business. In fact, the law says that you're to maintain the required records and make them available upon request during normal business hours. So whatever records that we're going to discuss, you want to make sure that you either have originals or copies at the store. And you want to make sure that employees know where those are. For example, if the manager is responsible for maintaining those records, what I have found best is maybe you want to have a red 3-ring binder or something that's noticeable to where the other employees know this is the folder that I want to see when I walk into the store. What I ask for are PERC receipts, PERC purchase receipts, monthly and 12-month rolling total PERC purchase records, weekly or bi-weekly leak detection inspection records, and weekly temperature measurement records. Now I'm going to back up just a minute. What I do first on my initial visit to the store is I classify that store, and that classification is based on 2 factors. One, when the machine was initially installed and operated, and if it was prior to December 1991, it's existing. After that, it's new. And that date goes with the machine. If you buy a used machine from Texas, that original date comes with it. After December 1991, they're classified as new. Now, dry-to-dries, which generally we're not going to see any transfer systems, dry-to-dry machines, if the high 12-month rolling total per purchase is 140 gallons or more, they're large. Less than that, they're small. Once large, always large. So after I determine what your classification is, that determines what parts of the law apply to you. For example, a small existing. Small existing means a dry-to-dry that was installed prior to December 9th, 1991, and your high 12-month rolling total is less than 140. You do not have to have a refrigerated condenser for controlling your PERC emissions. Therefore, you're not required to have weekly temperature measurement records. Your leak detection is bi-weekly rather than weekly. The small existing, which is less than 140 gallons dry-to-dry for high 12-month rolling total, and initially installed and operated prior to December 9th, 1991, you're not required to have a refrigerated condenser, therefore you're not required to maintain temperature measurement records. On the other hand, all your smalls, whether they're small new or small existing, you have to do bi-weekly leak detection inspections. Your large existing and your new large has to do weekly leak detection inspections.
Okay, I'm going to be checking the leakage around the drum door, checking the gasket, making certain there's no leakage of PERC.
Now that I have a positive indication of a leak, I need to make a note on my worksheet. And on my worksheet, there are several items. One under door gaskets and seatings. I have a positive indication of a leak. I mark down an instrument, and that's what I used. I know that I need to install my gasket if I have one in the back within 24 hours. If not, I need to call my repair person and have them order a gasket within 2 working days. Once that part is received, I have 5 working days to have it installed.
Now we come around to the back of the machine, and the first thing we want to check is our filter housings. Moving slowly around the connection. Proceeding around to the back side of the housing, checking for any possible leaks, bringing it up and over, And while I'm in the area, I'm also checking my fittings. It's important to go all the way around the valve to check for potential leakage. And then I proceed down to the inlet door, checking the top of it, noticing this is very hot. And while I'm down here, I'll check some other valves and fittings for any possible leakage. And over here, just below the button trap, and then up around the gasket on the button trap. Very slowly checking for potential leaks.
Now one thing, the way we operate is if a store is under new ownership, when I walk in the door to do a compliance inspection, and I've not been there before under that new owner, we treat that as a first-time compliance inspection, and consequently we take no legal action based on anything I find. For example, violations. That's more of a training session for the owner-operator at that time. We still note what the violations are, but we're not going to take any legal actions as a result of those. After the first inspection, the second inspection, then of course they're liable for all requirements that are in the NESHAP. So when I walk into a store and I determine what the classification is, and generally at this point I know 95% of the stores what their classification is because I've already been there at least once, then I know what kind of records they're to be maintaining. I'll ask for the PERC purchase receipts because everybody, no matter what your classification, has to maintain PERC purchase receipts. I ask for the monthly and 12-month rolling total PERC purchase record because everybody has to do that. Then I'll either ask for the biweekly or the weekly leak detection inspection records, and I'll ask for the weekly temperature measurement records. Once I get those records, what I do is I take those receipts. Now, it's important to note that I don't go any farther back than 5 years from the time I'm there. So you have to maintain your records for 5 years. And when I come back for the second visit, what I'll do is I'll start from the date that I was there the last time and go forward. I'll never backtrack. The only exception to that would be on your 12-month rolling total to make sure that that's being calculated properly. I may go back 1 year prior to the last date that I was there. Hopefully that makes sense. So what I do with the PERC purchase receipts is I reconcile the monthly and the 12-month rolling total PERC purchase record. In other words, I take that receipt and it says that you got this on January 1st of 08, then I go to the monthly and 12-month rolling total of PERC purchase record. I look at January of 08 and I make sure that you recorded the amount of that PERC purchase. If you make more than one purchase in a month, you only record one amount. You add those together and record one amount. After I've reconciled the receipts with the monthly and 12-month rolling total PERC purchase records, I make sure that receipt is again recorded in the proper month. What I have found, for example, on some receipts, it'll say ordered on such and such a date, received on such and such a date, and if you ordered it at the end of the month and you received it at the first of the month, it's going to have two different dates on there. I don't care which date is used as long as they're consistent. And what I find a lot of stores do, they'll jump around. And when they do that, then I just pick the one that I want, and that's what we go with as far as recording. Then after I've reconciled the receipts with the monthly record, I look at the 12-month rolling total. Now there's two ways to calculate that 12-month rolling total. The easiest way is that rolling total is always a 12-month figure. For example, if you're going to calculate March of 08, what the 12-month rolling total is, you start with your monthly purchase for March, and then you backtrack till you got 12 months, and you add those, and that's what your 12-month rolling total is. In calculating your 12-month rolling total, I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to go with 06, and here's January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, 107, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so here you got your date. And here I'm going to write down what you purchased for the month, and then over here I'm going to do the 12-month rolling total. Let's just say in January of 06 you purchased 15 gallons. In February you purchased 30, 10, 0, 10, 15, 20, 0, 0, 10, 20, 15, 10, 15, 20, 10, 10, 0. Alright, wherever you started your record keeping, which if you've been in business since prior to December of 1993, that's when it started, was December of 1993. But for explanation purposes, I'm starting this January of 06. So the rolling total over here is 15, 45, 55, 55, 65, 80, 100, 100, 100, 110, 130, 145. So what this is so far is just a cumulative total, adding one to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one for the first 12 months. And the first 12 months I come up with this example with 145. Now, on January of 07, if you want to determine what the 12-month rolling total is, and this is a 12-month purchase right here, you want to find out what you purchased for January, which is the first month, and if you count back 12 months, for the next month, you would add the 12 figures and get your rolling total. 12 figures and get your rolling total. That's the best way to do it, because if you make an error on one of them, that error is not going to be carried through to the next month. After I've determined that the 12-month rolling total is calculated properly, and during that process, if it's not calculated properly, I actually calculate it and show the owner-operator how to do it properly. And then in my report, I can show those as violations for not calculating properly, but I also note that they were corrected during the inspection. So from that point forward, you should be able to do it correctly on your own. After I've done that portion of the paperwork, then I ask to see the weekly leak and the weekly temperatures, assuming that they're weeklies. And I'll start back from the last day I was there, or 5 years, whichever is the shortest time period. In other words, if I went in today is May 1st. If I did an inspection and I go back, and this is just an example, if I went back June 1st to do another inspection, I'm not going to start prior to May 1st. I'm going to start from the May 1st records and go forward. Because if you have violations of, for example, not recording a temperature or whatever, it's still going to be there, and we're not going to double ding you for that. That's why I start from the day I was last there, but I can't go greater than a 5-year period from the time I walk in the door. Now, even though I may not look at these records again, you still have to maintain them for 5 years. The thing that I make sure is that there's no more than 7 calendar days between each entry. Now, the law doesn't require you to pick a particular day of the week to do your record keeping, but you're better off if you do. And I don't care what day you pick, as long as you're consistent. That does a couple of things. One, it helps eliminate the human error part of forgetting to do it. And two, if something happens other than on a day of record keeping, it doesn't go into the record keeping itself, and I can explain that as we go through. So I make sure that there's no more than 7 calendar days between each entry. If there is, then I ask the question, was that machine operating? Let's just say, for example, that you're doing your record keeping on Friday, and there's a blank Friday, and it's not until the following Friday that you have the records entered. I asked, was that machine down from that Friday till the next Friday when you did your record keeping? If the answer is yes, then that's fine. If the answer is no, we started back up on Monday prior to the following Friday, then you need to do your record keeping on that Monday, because that was the first day you operated after the day that you normally do your record keeping. Then if you want to get back on Friday, you do it the very next Friday. So if there's any more than 7 calendar days between any entry in the record keeping on the leak and temperature, then that machine should not have been operating during that time period. Hopefully that's clear. Now, let's just say again that you're doing Fridays to do your record keeping. If you find a leak on Monday, you fix it on Tuesday. If it's not there the following Friday, it never goes into your record keeping.
Now I'm noting logs from my door gasket, and I know I don't have a gasket, so I need to call my repair guy, Joe Gasket. Hey Joe, I was doing my weekly leak detection, and I detected a leak on my drum gasket, and I'm hoping you have a part. No? Can you order one for me? Yeah, thanks. And then let me know when it comes in, because I have 5 working days to have it installed once you get it. Thanks. See you later. Well, I know that detecting the leak isn't a violation. Not taking corrective action is within 24 hours or 2 working days. In this case, I've called my repair guy, Joe Gasket. He's going to order my part, and once I receive that part, I have 5 working days to have it installed.
So what I look for leaks in your record keeping. I look for temperature exceedances in your record keeping. Then I look for the repair record related to any of those cases. After I've looked at those records, and these records are to be maintained current, then I go back and I look at the machine itself. And if the machine is operating during the inspection, I'll wait around until that machine shuts down so I can take my own temperature reading. The time to take that temperature reading is during the last cool down cycle, just prior to opening the door and pulling the clean clothes out. Again, I'm always going to use Friday as an example for the record keeping day. If you run 10 loads on Friday, it doesn't matter which load you use to do your temperature or leak records, pick one of them. And what I have found is some of the temperature gauges are on the front of the machine, some are on the back of the machine. I've had them on top of the machine where you had to climb a ladder. And the guy actually got up on his knees on the machine just to read the temperature gauge. I asked for a mirror in that case, so I could read it. What's important is where the probe is, not where the gauge is. If you've ever seen these temperature gauges in your kitchen that tells you what the outside temperature is, that's because the probe is outside. You can put that temperature gauge on the front door of the building. It's where that probe is. And where that probe is supposed to be measuring is the temperature of the exhaust at the outlet of the refrigerated condenser. I'll say that again, the temperature of the exhaust at the outlet of the refrigerated condenser. What's coming out of that refrigerated condenser? If you think of the refrigerated condenser like a whiskey still, the guy boils his corn mesh down here in this copper kettle. He sends it through those spiral tubes, and it drips out as a liquid into the jar. What he's doing, he's vaporizing it down here in this kettle. He's cooling it off when it goes through the coils, and then it's turning back into a liquid and going back into the jar. That's the same thing that your refrigerated condenser does. Your machine is vaporizing the perc, that's why you can smell it. If those vapors are going up to the refrigerated condenser, being cooled back down, turned back into a liquid, and then being returned to the machine. So that's the way that what you're measuring is the temperature of the exhaust, what's coming out of that refrigerated condenser. And the time to do that is during the last cool down cycle, just prior to opening the door and pulling the clean clothes out. Now what I found when I do it, that machine shuts off, I'm looking at that temperature gauge. That temperature gauge at times will continue to fall. But after a short period of time, it'll start climbing up. So you don't want to wait very long before you take that temperature reading. I look at how the perc contaminated waste is being maintained. The law says that all perc and perc contaminated waste has to be maintained in a closed non-leaking container. That's just, I'm not going to mention any brand names, but most people are aware of those plastic, probably 35-gallon drums that have the metal ring with the lid, and those metal rings are a bear. I mean, they are tough, and if you've used them, you know it. And what I tell the stores is you do not have to put that metal ring back on for my purposes. You don't want the stuff laying out in the hallway so people can hit it and knock it over. But if it's back against a corner, you don't have to put that metal ring back on for it to be closed non-leaking. But if it has any waste in it, that lid cannot be warped, and these lids are plastic. If that lid's not warped, it makes a good contact with that container, then I consider that to be closed non-leaking. If the lid is warped, you're going to have to put that ring back on every time you put waste in it, perc waste. Your perc waste consists of lint, muck, and separator water. That's your perc contaminated waste. I look at the separator water. Now, prior to July of 1996, before the feds revised the law said that you had to maintain all perc contaminated waste in a closed non-leaking container. And when you collect your separator water, what we have told people to do is just take one of your soap buckets, 5-gallon soap buckets, cut a hole in the lid, or take the little lid off and stick your hose in that hole to collect your separator water. That's not truly closed non-leaking, because if it was closed non-leaking, you would have no air going in or out. And in that case, you would have no separator water going in, because eventually the pressure would work up to where you wouldn't get any more in it. So we've always allowed that hole with the hose stuck through the hole. Now with the feds revising the NESHAP, they've allowed for it now. So that was one of the changes that happened. So after I look at the separator water, I'll ask, how do you dispose of your separator water? I'm not going to get into that. You're always safe having it hauled by a licensed waste hauler. But there are other methods, and you can contact us for those other methods if you're interested. You're probably familiar with them anyway. So after I've looked at the machine operating, I've looked at the waste, I tell the owner-operator that you're to have an owner's manual near the machine anywhere the building's fine, and sometimes I ask to see it, sometimes I don't. If I've seen it in the past, sometimes I don't ask for it, but you have to make it available upon request. Now if you're going to use these pressure readings in lieu of your temperature readings, you're going to have that owner's manual, because in there it's going to tell you what the pressure readings should be, the high-low pressure readings should be. And if I come in and that's the system that you're using, you're going to have to show me that owner's manual and show me what your high and low should be, so that when I look at your record keeping for high-low pressures, I know that you're within the limits. Otherwise, if you do use your temperatures, you won't have to do that. One other thing that I make mention to the owner-operator is that I ask if they have spin disc or disposable PERC filters on their machines. I'm not that concerned with spin disc, but PERC filters, you have to allow them to drain in the housing or another closed container for at least 24 hours before you pull and pitch it. The reason for that is so that you reclaim as much of that PERC as possible and not send it out with your waste hauler. And again, that gets back to everything in this law is keeping PERC in that machine, and it's saving you money. If you smell a leak, you're losing money. If you're throwing a PERC filter out that still has PERC in it that you can't let drain out, you're losing money. And most stores understand at this point. The only other thing is keep the door closed, except the machine door closed, except when loading and unloading. Before I leave, I have what's called a verification and inspection form that I fill out. It basically just says that I was there, the date I was there, whether I found violations or not. I sign it, have the owner-operator sign it, I leave them a copy, and I tell them, which is on that form, that I have 45 days by law to send them a letter as a result of this inspection. Normally I try to have the letters done the same day, but they probably won't get the letter for 35 days because it's reviewed by two other tiers of review before it ever is signed and mailed. Particularly violation letters, because they're signed by other people. And when we send something out in writing, that's our official position in this matter. That's why it goes through two tiers of review before letters are signed and mailed out. I could go into enforcement, but I really don't want to.